He liked to come up to me while I was working and say stuff like, "Must be hard not having a mother." It had never bothered me before, but after I found out that Grandpa had adopted me, I started to think that maybe he didn't really want me. If I could work on my own, then he could get rid of me. I was scared to know the truth, so I never asked him. Then one day he took me to a bar in our neighborhood. During the day, of course. He went there sometimes to drink scotch, but I'd never gone before. When we got in the inn, he just walked up to the counter with that grumpy look he has, and I thought, oh no, he's gonna make me work here. But I was wrong. I saw him pass something to the bartender, and then he picked me up and sat me down on a stool next to the counter. The stool was pretty high, especially for a 7-year-old kid, and my legs just dangled off of it. It seemed really, really high to me, and I was pretty nervous. Eventually, the bartender came back over with a glass of scotch and another big glass full of something else. As I looked closer, I realized that the second glass was full of some sort of brown liquid with a scoop of ice cream in it. It took me a minute to realize what it was. A root beer float. I'd never seen one before. I was so surprised. Root beer was even more expensive than the nicest alcohol in the bar. To me and the other kids, it seemed more like an urban legend than a real drink. But there it was, right in front of me. I stared at the float. I still wasn't sure it was real at that point, and then turned to look at Grandpa. He looked back at me. I didn't know what to do, so I turned to the bartender. He'd already turned around and walked off though, so I figured he must have put the glass down in front of me on purpose. It still didn't seem like it could be real, and I was just staring at it when Grandpa told me to hurry up and drink it before the ice cream melted. His gruff voice sounded like an angel's. "Is this really mine?" He nodded. Words can't describe how awesome it was. I'd never tasted anything like root beer before. The creamy sweetness of the ice cream made my entire head feel light. I felt like the luckiest boy in the whole world. That's not an exaggeration. I really thought that. The root beer float was delicious, but what made me even happier was Grandpa. When I looked over at him, he was smiling. I knew that's gotta be hard for you to imagine, but he really was. Right then, I didn't care whether he'd just found me and adopted me or not. He'd bought me a root beer float. That made me way luckier than some kid who had a mother, but had never tasted root beer. Of course, after we left the bar, he was the first kid I bragged to. So Grandpa and I were doing pretty good until the fight. I was in a super bad mood that day. I'd torn one of my shoes that morning and some old drunk guy had yelled at me. All the junk I found was totally useless. The day was almost over and I was fed up, so I just grabbed some random trash and took it back to the house. When I showed what I'd found to Grandpa, he frowned. He started going through each thing I'd brought back, explaining why they were all useless. I got really mad and just yelled, "I don't care." Then he got mad and I couldn't take it anymore, so I ran away. I was pretty upset and I started thinking that maybe Grandpa had only adopted me so he could raise me to work and make money for him. After a while, I went and hid in an abandoned building, but by then I'd started to calm down and think that maybe I should go back and apologize. It had started raining pretty hard though, so I decided I should wait for it to stop. But that was just an excuse. The truth was that I was nervous. Part of me knew I'd done something wrong, but I didn't want to admit it. The rain didn't stop though, so I just sat there staring out at the gloomy grey sky. I imagined Grandpa coming to get me. It kept raining all night and he never showed up. I gave up waiting and decided it was time to go home. I was about halfway there when I heard somebody groaning. At first I thought I should just ignore it and not get involved, but I went over anyway. It was Grandpa. He was totally soaked and I could tell right away that he'd been there for a really long time. I yelled and he opened his eyes a little bit. He smiled weakly and said he was glad I was safe. He'd spent all night out in the rain looking for me. I felt awful. Grandpa had been out in the rain looking for me so long that he'd collapsed. I was horrible. He'd heard me crying in the rain, but I hadn't heard him. As I ran to get the doctor, I promised whatever God might be listening that if they would only save Grandpa, I'd never ask for another root beer float ever again. He got a real bad fever and his temperature wouldn't go down for days. The doctor said that if it kept up, he'd die. If he died, then I'd be all alone. There wouldn't be anybody else to care for about me. Anyone left to care for me. The thought of that happening terrified me. Fortunately, I must have passed some of my luck on to Grandpa because a week later, his fever finally broke. I was glad he wasn't going to die, but I was also a little scared. What if he had decided he didn't want a stupid kid like me around anymore? My plan was to apologize as soon as he woke up, but when the moment came, my brain just stopped. Grandpa started to talk, and it took me a minute to realize he was apologizing. I didn't know what to think. He explained that he was an old man and that meant he was probably going to die sooner rather than later. He was strict with me because he wanted to make sure I'd be able to make it on my own after he was gone. But maybe he'd been a little too strict. All of the things I'd worried about had been stupid and selfish. Grandpa cared about me a whole lot. He'd been worried when I ran off and he'd gone out into the rain to look for me. I tried to apologize, but when I opened my mouth, I just started crying. I don't think I've cried that much since I was a baby. But he just smiled and patted my head. I asked him if he'd ever regretted adopting me. His eyes got all wide and he said, "Of course not." He told me that he was looking for a really important lady, and because of that, he'd had to give up on pretty much everything else in his life. But when he took me in and started raising me, he felt like he'd gotten some of what he lost back. That was when I decided I'd stay with him forever. Even if I said I couldn't. Even if he said I couldn't. Tenmyuji ending? Or Quark ending? Tenmyuji end. Okay, so the ending pictures in the save file are in the order that they show up here. Still can't continue there. Still can't continue there. That still doesn't explain why Tenmyuji has a picture of Akane on him all the time. But the way Quark was saying go to the theater only comes once a week and it shows old newscasts and old movies and all that. It made it sound like that they didn't live at a time where everything else was normal, where everyone had a TV. We could watch movies on the TV, we could have internet and all that. I don't know if they really had internet when this a game was originally released, so whether people had that access, I don't know. I'm gonna see if this one solve the mystery of the two-headed lion. That's the one for a passcode I don't have yet. Can't do that one. That one's an end. That's an end. That's the ends I just had. That one I can't do. That's an end. Here is the next one. Ally time here. We were partnered with Clover, and I think Temiyuji was our opponent, or the person we were with in the room.
What did you choose, Sigma?
Ally. You didn't see me push the button?
No.
Huh. Well, you'll know in a moment. Let's go. I gave her a light pat on the shoulder and headed toward the wall where the results would be displayed.
Results from round 2 of the Ambidex game will now be displayed. Please direct your attention to the results screen.
Oh, we were against Quark. That was the ending when I went betray. Everyone attacked me and refused to let me go through the door, and Clover went out instead. No one's got 9 points, so this is the timeline that we have the other escape room. They once again had no choice but betray, and Dio was once again willing to kill Alice for the sake of leaving. But is Alice sick with Radical 6? Is she still alive? Has she been stabbed? I don't know. I suppose that one... I suppose they were both on 1 point. So, practically they could... Probably the best option would have been both to betray, because there's no chance of the one dying. But at the same time, if they went betray and they went ally, or he went ally, he would have died. Them going ally and he going betray, Luna would have died. So they kind of had to ally, both ally or both betray, otherwise someone would have died. And this one's a good one that we all went ally.
Points have been assigned or subtracted accordingly. Please check your bracelet to see your updated bracelet points.
I hope we do get the answer of why does Grandpa or Temiyuji have a photo of Akane? And why is he so attached to that photo? Akane Kurashiki.
So you chose Ally, huh?
I did. Yeah. Quark is sick, a kid, and unable to vote. I couldn't bring myself to betray someone like that.
Thank you.
No need to thank me. I only did what anyone would have done. Except Dio. So you guys chose Ally too, huh?
Of course. Tenmyoji had only one BP left, and he was guaranteed to vote Ally. So there's no way we could betray somebody in that position. If we had, then he'd...
Yeah, you didn't have much choice. Ah, this is one where Tenmyuji stayed with Quark and didn't vote. Alice, Kay, and Dio, on the other hand, seem to have had a less pleasant round.
Hey, what the hell is your problem?
Okay, so Alice is perfectly healthy.
You're either crazy or just an asshole.
The second one.
Were you trying to kill me?
He was.
No, nothing like that.
Of course you were. You just wanted to leave.
Well then, what was it like? If we'd voted Ally, I'd...
You would be dead. The needles in your bracelet would have activated, killing you.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I didn't think there was any way in hell you guys would choose Ally, not with Alice's BP at 1. The only way you could possibly vote was Betray. Picking Ally when I knew you guys would pick Betray would have been suicide.
Why? You wouldn't have gone below 1 point.
You can't die.
Yeah.
You got 6 BP.
Well, maybe not immediately, no. But I would have been signing my own death warrant.
No, not necessarily.
Heck, not just mine. Everyone except Kay's.
What? How?
What?
Didn't you think it through? Your vote was always gonna be Betray.
Because Kay had 6 points. And Kay wanted to leave.
Let's say I was a raving lunatic and picked Ally. What would happen to Kay's BP?
6 plus 3 would make 9.
See? Then it'd be game over. Life over. He'd open the number 9 door and blow this popsicle stand. And that'd leave us twisting in the wind, living out the rest of our miserable lives stuck in this place. You see? That's why I chose Betray. I did it to save all our necks, including yours.
Don't twist these words, Dio. You don't care for anyone. You wanted to leave, and you don't care who dies in the process. Alice gritted her teeth and scowled fiercely at Dio, apparently trying to think of a rebuttal, before finally snorting indignantly and stalking away. Shortly thereafter, the warehouse was filled with the rumbling sound of the doors sliding shut.
The Ambidex gates
Have
have
closed.
Round 3 of the Ambidex Games. Star keys are... There is no... The Ambidex...
As many times as we want, huh? Then that means...
We can play the AB game as many times as we want.
Yep.
Right?
Hey,
Kind of.
didn't Zero Jr. say something about this?
As soon as the gates close, your colors get all shuffled up automatically. The pair and solo assignments hop around a bit too.
That was a little bit different saying that than about the cards being used as many times. Yeah, he did. Can you guys all show me your bracelets? I want to see what all our colours and groups are this time. Within moments, a series of wrists were extended for me to examine. I see. Luna and Clover are cyan pair, Fi and Alice are magenta pair. The remaining 3 are all solos. Kay is red, Dio is green, and I'm blue. So how are the groups supposed to work for the next round? I think the next doors are going to be those white ones down in the floor B warehouse.
Yeah, I heard about those. Alice told me about them while we were here waiting for you and Clover. I think I've got them figured out.
Yeah? So lay it out for us. How are the groups going to shake it out this time? Fire nodded and began to explain. Option A. I don't know why it's saying option A, there's only one option here. Tamiuji and Quark, yellow pair, up with blue to open one door. Fi and Alice pair up with Dio to open another door. Luna and Clover pair up with Kay to open the last door.
Oh? Is there only one option?
Yes. No other combinations would be able to open the secondary doors. Admittedly, Tenmyoji and Quark aren't here for us to check, but I'm sure they're the yellow pair. If they weren't, then Sigma would be stuck without anybody he could pair up with.
Yep.
Oh, God. I never thought I'd have to put up with Dio again.
Well, you just didn't think hard enough then. Sooner or later, everybody puts up with Dio. Wait.
So for this last round, we're all the same.
What should we do now?
The colours are all the same.
It looks like we have a lot of time until the primary doors open.
Yeah, about 80 minutes.
I'm worried about Quark's condition. Those pods can't cure Radical 6. He still needs help.
Well, we don't have anything to lose, so we might as well look for that medicine. Excelavir, right?
Yeah. What about the rest of you?
Oh, I'll help.
As will I.
Me too.
Fine. I guess I can help.
What about you, Sigma?
Of course I'll help. What kind of jerk wouldn't?
Okay. We should split up and search.
After some discussion, Dio and Kay were assigned to the pantry, Luna and Alice to the treatment center, Clover, Fire, and myself to the pressure exchange chamber.
Shall we regroup in the floor B warehouse 10 minutes before the doors open?
We all nodded. Kay turned to Alice and Luna.
You are going to the treatment center, correct?
Yes.
Then please remember to tell Tenmyoji where we intend to meet and when.
Okay.
You must also remember to bring Quark with you. I am concerned about removing him from the pod, but it can't be helped. Without Quark's bracelet, Sigma and Tenmyoji will be unable to open the secondary door.
Right.
Good. Looks like we got all that straightened out. Let's go.
With a final nod to one another, we split up, each team heading in a different direction. So this is the pressure exchange chamber. So this one has to extend. Because we're talking about going into another door, no one's left the number 9 door, so this one surely has to continue longer.
No, this is the prep room. There are 2 levels. The actual pressure exchange chamber is downstairs. How do you know that? Alice told me. She was one of the people who investigated this room.
Did you talk to her when you were waiting for us back in the warehouse?
Yeah.
Well, let's head downstairs then.
Good idea.
So this is the real thing.
Seems like it.
Why do they have something like this here?
Well, this is just what Alice told me, but...
Apparently the pressure inside the facility was a lot higher than the pressure outside. That was part of a system designed to keep the virus from getting in. It did mean, however, that we'd need to go through a decompression process in order to get out.
Remember all those suits along the wall of the prep room? Those keep
Yep.
you from getting infected. We won't even be able to enter the pressure exchange chamber if we don't have them on.
I see. Then that newspaper article was right?
Unfortunately, that seems pretty likely.
So the air outside is teeming with Radical 6.
Yeah.
Something's been bothering me.
What is it?
Aren't you saying that if we put on those suits, we can go into the pressure exchange chamber and go outside? Right.
Oh. No, we can't do that. The door beyond the pressure exchange chamber is locked up tight.
Damn. Just one door between us and freedom.
Well, if you look at it that way, it's the same as the number 9 door.
Okay, yeah, but
Whatever. We need to be focusing on finding that Accelavir. Quark needs it.
Yeah, you're right.
I'll go look around upstairs. You two take this floor, all right?
okay. Got it.
Okay.
We looked everywhere we could think of, but turned up nothing. Eventually, I couldn't keep my mouth shut any longer. Hey, what do you think the deal is with this stuff about the world being infested with some crazy virus? A pandemic seems like it would make the news, but I don't remember hearing anything. Wait a minute. You mentioned it, didn't you? Back when Dio was asking questions. We were in the infirmary. It was right after Quark lost it.
Have any of you guys heard anything about any sort of viral pandemic?
Well, no. But
And then Alice said,
I have heard rumors about a virus being used as a bioweapon.
so what's the rumor she was talking about? I got the feeling you and Alice were talking about the same thing. Clover, what do you know? What are you and Alice anyway? I heard you guys belong to some sort of organization, but what is it? Clover was quiet for a long time. She bit her thumbnail and looked down at the floor. Then finally she lifted her head and met my eyes.
fine. I think I can trust you. Just don't tell Alice, okay?
Alright,
Promise?
promise. Clover nodded and began to talk. I listened with rapt attention, at a complete loss for words. Here is what she said. Why can't they read these out to me? Alice and I are agents of SOIS, which is under the jurisdiction of the Department of Defense. SOIS stands for Special Office of Internal Security, and we're an elite intelligence division that investigates potential disruptive or dangerous elements, such as domestic or foreign terrorists, radical political splinter groups, and religious organizations with extreme agendas that could pose a threat to the state or citizenry. Our existence hasn't been made public, so there are only a few people who even know we exist. You're probably wondering how I even got involved in something like that, huh? Well, it started when I met Alice. I told you that I've played the Nonary game twice before, right? Well, this was after the second time, so about a year ago. We'd just escaped and we were all stuffed into this SUV barreling across the desert. I was driving, and that's when I saw her. Alice. She was standing next to the road with her thumb out. She was already working for the SOIS and she'd been on her way to the building we'd been trapped in as part of her investigation. But on the way there, her car had broken down. We offered to give her a ride, of course. After she got in, we started talking, and it turned out that Alice had gotten a tip that the terrorists she was after were in the building where we'd been trapped in. We couldn't see how us playing the Nonary game had anything to do with the terrorists, but Alice had a suggestion. Maybe the two people who trapped you in there are the terrorists. That didn't seem very likely to us, but we were chasing after them anyway, so we decided to bring Alice with us. Unfortunately, we didn't find them. As far as we know, they're still out there now, on the run.